Do your hair a favor by checking in online and arriving just in time for your Sport Clips MVP haircut experience while you surround yourself with sports on TV. Great cut, massaging shampoo, and hot steam towel. Claim your spot today. SportClips.com/check-in.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio. ESPN2, Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. All callers on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike, I think I have a problem because last night I actually went to a bar so I could watch multiple preseason games at once. Is this normal? This is normal behavior, right? Like, I'm so thirsty for the NFL to return that I found myself in a bar last night, riveted, watching every single snap, trying to figure out what's going on with Sam Darnold, but I didn't want to miss the Patriots-Eagles game. Do I have a problem?
Not as big a problem as I have, as I was sitting on my couch doing the same thing, yelling at my computer as Game Pass was struggling to get dialed up in time to see the start of both of the 7:30 game, or the 7:30 game, before both of the 8 o'clock games got going. So, no, you had a solution. I had a problem.
Well, that is a fair point. You know, I just decided that I would celebrate the continual opening of football season. I don't know why I'm so hyped for it. I can't figure it out. But there is just this piece, especially, and we're going to get into the preseason games, what we saw last night. But there's this piece where I found myself sitting at a bar last night, watching all of the games, looking around, thinking life is right. You know, I needed multiple football games to hit me at once for everything to feel like it's here and to feel the joy down in my heart.
Young quarterbacks that are giving bad teams hope. It's a recipe to make us all kind of excited.
You know, hope is everything, right? Because I equate the offseason to a bad relationship. At the very end of last year, just like the very end of a relationship, you had a really good idea, your relationship with your team. You had a really good idea how bad it was. You know, you could look at it and say, well, this was terrible, this was terrible, this was terrible. Then you hit free agency and you're like, you know what? Things are getting a little better, and then you hit the draft, and suddenly it's like, you know what? There were a few games last year that we were in, we could have won, especially if you're a bad team that drafts a quarterback. You find yourself 6 months later only remembering the good and thinking this is the year where it all turns around, and suddenly you're back in the relationship.
Well, exactly. That was all the couples therapy, and now you're taking the things that you learned in couples therapy, and you're trying to put them into practice right now in the early going, and it's good, but then you end up over your in-laws' house, and then all of a sudden mid-season you're screaming in your significant other in a Denny's parking lot, and you're back where you started.
It all comes back to the Denny's parking lot. We'll get into some of what we saw last night, but first let's get you caught up on what's trending. The biggest story from yesterday was the Marlins-Braves kerfuffle. Well, we have a fallout from that as Marlins starting pitcher Jose Urena has been suspended for 6 games and fined an undisclosed amount for intentionally hitting Atlanta Braves rookie Ronald Acuna Jr. on Wednesday night.
Braves first base coach Eric Young also suspended 1 game and fined an undisclosed amount for his role in the incident. Now, Acuna Jr. was back in the lineup for the Braves. He wore a protective guard, went 1 for 4 with a single to extend his hit streak to 9 games, but that was the good news there. Everything came back for him positive. There was no structural damage, anything like that, to that elbow that took the shot, and so he remains on the field. I know you were marveling at the Urena 6-game suspension that essentially gets you 1 start in the world of pitching, which we know is how these suspensions work in Major League Baseball, but it always makes them funny because we understand that's why they are structured that way.
Yeah, it just feels like such a hot garbage way to explain it to everybody when you say, hey, it's a 6-game suspension. Well, it's really a 1-start suspension. So let's call it what it is. It's a 1-game suspension for him. It's 6 games for him to get that through. But frankly, it's 6-game suspension, depending on the way their schedule lays out, they could just sort of push back a start. So it's not the end of the world. It's not really some staggering punishment. I wanted 6 starts. You tell me he's out for 6 starts, that sends a message. I'm still fired up on this.
Yeah,
thing.
Major League Baseball is not really concerned with what you want, and they're not really concerned with deterring this kind of behavior.
Well, that is absolutely 100% true. And I understand it, as Twitter reminded me yesterday, that obviously I just don't get the show when it comes to baseball because most fans seem to be okay with it too. Mets fans had a weird day yesterday. The Mets have done something for the first time since 1894. 1894. The Mets and Phillies split a doubleheader yesterday. That's not the interesting part, though, Mike. It's the way they split it that's interesting.
All right, so here we go. In the first game, New York won 24-4. Coupled with a 25-4 loss to the Nationals from earlier this season, the Mets are the first team to score 24 runs in a game and allow 24 runs in a game in the same season since 1984. That season... 1894, excuse me, it's fine. In 1894, 4 teams all did it in the same season. The Boston Beaneaters, the Chicago Colts, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was really sort of a letdown that the Pirates and the Phillies happen to have their same name. There's some old teams. Jesus. The Boston, you're so old that your contemporaries were once the Boston Beaneaters.
I mean, I look at that as some level of respect. I was looking at it thinking, man, Phillies and Pirates, I love that. Love they got the same name since 1894. That's strong. That's branding.
That gives you you have bad throwback night. Like, you just have old Pirates jerseys. The Boston Red Sox get to go Beaneater throwbacks if they want to.
Hey,
those are some gems.
I know that feeling. Like, Raiders throwback jerseys are not much different than Raiders current jerseys. Every time I get those, I don't get a lot of throwback jersey love. Philly won the second game 9-6. That's one of those things that drives a fan base crazy when you win the first game of a doubleheader by, almost 3 touchdowns, and then you lose the second game of the doubleheader that way.
It is classic Mets, though. We're going to talk about this because of the historical significance and not roast the Phillies the way we absolutely roasted the Mets. When they got 24 hung up on them, we spent the next day pointing and laughing at the Mets, and this is just proof that this has become the brand at this point. That's who they are. The Phillies aren't going to get the same bit of heat thrown their way, but you can be sure we're going to bring up that Mets loss like we just did.
Well, I do love the little bit of history there. Anytime we can be quoting 1894, I feel like we feel very sophisticated today.
I want a Beaneaters jersey.
Oh, my God.
That's what I want.
This is just the beginning of a day full. Look, I can only tell you, if this morning's prep has been any indication, you are going to go on a bender of asking for 3 things for the course of the morning.
I'm just saying, I think we're all Beaneaters around here. This looks like a set of Beaneaters.
Does anyone know what the Beaneater jerseys actually look like?
I hope I don't find out that being a Beaneater is somehow a bad thing.
And
I'm just
on
a kid
that
who likes
note,
beans.
Oh my God. Just getting us away from that as fast as possible. Brent Snedeker opened the Wyndham Championship with the 10th round of 59 or better in PGA Tour history, becoming the 9th different player to do it.
He becomes the 3rd player to shoot 59 or better that included a bogey, and the first player ever to break 60 when starting a round with the bogey, and we heard from him about that yesterday.
Yeah, he was on Feinbaum. This is Brent.
It wasn't a great start, not gonna lie. The first hole was pretty ugly, and after that I kind of settled down. I hit a couple good shots on the next few holes and made a long putt on my 4th hole of the day for birdie, and that kind of got me going. And kind of turned at 300 par. I was waiting for something good to happen on the front 9 and kind of got off to a great start, hitting it really close for about 4 or 5 holes in a row. And just, kind of built on that momentum, realizing days like this don't come along very often. So when things started going really, really, really well, I was like, I need to put my foot down on the gas and go as low as I possibly can and try to shoot something special.
Going to go with the total homer moment and give our MVP moment of the week to Nashville's own Brent Snedeker.
Oh, God.
It's brought to you by Sport Clips. Check it online. Check in online at sportclips.com/check-in. Claim your spot today. That's what I did yesterday. I checked in online, got my hair cut at Sport Clips. And yes, Nashville's own Brent Snedeker. Total homerism.
That's how you do non-Tiger Woods golf right there. That is an expert level class in sneaking it.
I mean, that's hey, Brent is a great, great guy, and I hope he goes out and crushes just because he's awesome.
He joined Jim Furyk. It's the only players in PGA Tour history to shoot 27 on 9 holes. Jim Furyk, who needs to stop lying to us about Tiger Woods being on the Ryder Cup team and just go ahead and put it out there. I mean, my God.
You are angry about that.
I'm just saying. I mean, that was I understand. Is he just not? He might not be allowed to say it, but he would do himself a lot of favors just coming out and saying, yes, guys, we know what's going to happen with Tiger. Let me talk about the 8 top point guys. Let me talk about those guys. We know Tiger's going to be there. We know that's the only reason half of you want to tune into this. I've gotten that out of the way. Now stop asking about it.
I was rooting for maybe other guys to make it.
Man, you were searching for another golf name right there.
I am trolling. No. I'm just saying in general, I want to troll the fan base so much that people are just up in arms about it. It's sort of like the college football playoffs. I always want one team left out where you have to sit there and a fan base just gets their heart ripped out. Sort of what I want in the Ryder Cup too.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Well, it makes for entertainment. By the way, that was the 4th round of 59 or better in the last 3 years. There were 4 of those total in the previous 24 years. Look at me dropping golf knowledge.
Oh, it's amazing. Non-Tiger golf knowledge.
Oh, I feel like a big boy. So let's get to the big stuff from last night. That gets you caught up on what's trending. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. I'm Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Commercial insurance through Progressive protects your business and your dream. Choose from over 30 coverage options at progressivecommercial.com. All eyes last night were on a couple of different things. One, as you heard in the open today, Handshake Gate. You know, we're going to watch it. Anytime you get a Super Bowl rematch, I don't care if it's the preseason, people are going to watch it. But the other piece of it was Sam Darnold. Let's start there, Mike. Sam Darnold gets the entire first half for the Jets, and in that process, throws an interception in the red zone on a 4th and 1. A little curious that they decided to throw there, but they gave him the first half. And seems to be some mixed reviews. Some people thought he looked great. Some people thought he looked okay. Where were you on Sam Darnold?
Yeah, it was solid. It was a lot of what we saw, to be honest. The reaction from game one, I think, was just surprise because it was new at that point. Now we go into Sam Darnold with a bit of expectation, and maybe the evaluation comes back down to that middle ground. But what you saw from him last night was what I enjoy looking for in these young quarterbacks to start games, which is processing. You saw him working through progressions. You saw him fit some nice throws in there, and you saw him do some things that are obviously going to characterize rookie quarterback football. But the more and more, and I went and watched it again this morning, went and watched some of the plays from his game, and what it looks like to me and what it looks like the plan could and probably should be, because it worked out pretty well on that end, I think people would take Carson Wentz's rookie season, would they not? The production you got from Carson Wentz, because that looks like the game plan. Like they're under center, handing the ball off, and if they're not, they're in shotgun, they're spreading it out 4 and 5 wide, they're trying to simplify the looks for him, keep some of the passes short and safe, and just let him grow as a quarterback in that first year, because Teddy Bridgewater did well last night. Would you agree? Teddy Bridgewater, solid ball.
Yeah.
10 of 15, 127 yards. Like, Teddy Bridgewater is a darn good quarterback. He wasn't drafted 3rd overall. He hasn't.
So, and I see what you're saying there. I guess my two questions about Darnold, because you mentioned they used him a couple of different ways. Darnold was perfect from shotgun last night. He was 2 for 5 from under center. So there still seems to be a little bit of there's a difference. There's a gap right there. The other part of it is the processing, and this has hit me in both of the games I've watched so far. You talk about the processing, and you could see his body movement that he was going through his reads. It's great. It just feels like it takes a long time for him to process. And that's, I mean, I get he's a rookie. It's the very beginning. It felt like there were several times where he was holding the ball for a very long time to figure out where to go for it, go with it. That concerns me going into the actual regular season when he's facing defense that isn't completely vanilla.
No, absolutely. And he got some blitz looks last night. It looked like Washington was sitting back there in base defense and just letting him have his run at it. There's going to be a learning curve, but when you take a guy that high and he gives you enough early on to justify it, I think you let him go out there and work it. You're not sending him out there completely devoid. Now, the Jets' offensive line looked like it may struggle a little bit last night. It's a group that I think gave up 4 sacks overall between the 1s and the 2s, but Sam was out there with the 1s, and we saw a couple of those instances where, you know, the protection gave way and he was under a bit of duress, but we also saw him work his way out of some of that. They ran a bootleg with him, gets out of the way of some trouble there. I just think he's given you enough at this point to say, you know what, we don't need to hold him back. We'll live through some of these early mistakes because we understand and we see those flashes of potential that we drafted for.
It's interesting the way you said it earlier. He showed you enough. It's like the burden of proof is just to have enough proof that they should go in that direction. He doesn't have to clear. I don't feel like Darnold has to win the job. He just has to not lose the job. And that's an interesting piece because Bridgewater, now 2 straight games, has played very well. So there is a conversation because we've been so hyped on what Bridgewater has looked like through the OTAs and through practices, and now we see in 2 straight games that he's played well. There is a piece of this that you could look at the play and say, well, Bridgewater's a little better today. If that's the only difference, Bridgewater's a little better today, he's not going to get the job. Darnold will get the job. I mean, if it's close, if there's enough reason to just give Darnold the opportunity, he's going to get the opportunity, and then that raises a real question of what to do with Teddy.
Well, exactly. We all understand the pecking order that works in NFL football. When you find yourself in these situations, Teddy probably understands this as well as anybody. A former first-round pick himself, he knows what that investment in a player means to an NFL football team, and so he looks at this situation and says, I know who I'm showcasing my ability for. Josh McCown's got a very specific role on that team. another coach in that quarterback room, a guy who's been a great mentor for quarterbacks around the NFL. They look at him and they understand, all right, this is a guy we need around for that reason. But Teddy last night showed a lot of the same things we talked about with Sam, moved around under pressure, made a couple of great throws on drives in the second half. You know he wasn't working against the one defense, but this is also a guy who's played NFL football before, so you're a little more sure of the commodity that is Teddy Bridgewater, even post-injury.
Jets head coach Todd Bowles talked after the game about the quarterback situation. This is what he said.
I thought they played well. I thought they were gritty, had some adverse situations, but they hung in there tough and they played well. I understand the 2 interceptions. We don't like the turnovers, but I thought they fought and they played in some tough situations than last week, and I thought they handled it well.
Is it difficult to evaluate your quarterback when he doesn't get a lot of time back there?
No, that's the best time to evaluate him. It's easy to throw when you don't have any pressure and it's not adversity, but you want to find out what you have from a mental standpoint, and from a physical standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint. So the best time to evaluate him right now is for him to be under duress.
What are your initial impressions about how Sam did under those situations?
I mean, I thought both of them played well. Like I said, I got to see the film and I'll go over the rest of it, but under the plays that I saw off the cuff, I don't want to make instant evaluator without watching the film. I thought they played tough, and I thought they played gritty.
And that's why you go for it on 4th and 1, and that's why you throw for it on 4th and 1, because you're trying to say, all right, we've got this live practice ability to get our rookie into some very tense situations, some realistic situations, and see what kind of decisions he makes. See what happens when you hold his feet to the flames.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses, because let's face it, the stat you gave yesterday is one I'm going to continue to just reiterate throughout the course of the preseason. The Jets haven't had, they had the first ever 4,000-yard passer in Joe Namath. They haven't had a 4,000-yard passer since. So when you talk about what this Sam Darnold means to this organization, and not only this organization, but you talk about the fact that, as we talked to Sal Pal yesterday, and we've talked to a few experts, it looks like everybody believes in Todd Bowles to be the guy that develops him. There can be a level of patience, but there are a ton of expectations on Sam Darnold. From one quarterback to another, though, the other game gave us a huge quarterback discussion, because as we've talked about, surplus with Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold both playing well. Last night, the Eagles, they're already dealing with the quarterback issue with Carson Wentz and his health, and last night it looks like that was complicated as Nick Foles went down in the first half with an injury. This is what it sounded like.
Ertz comes in motion, moves left, fake to Smallwood, back to pass. Foles gets hit by Adrian Claiborne. Loose ball, picked up by Bentley, and he's going to rumble down inside. That's Jawan Bentley in for the touchdown, and no flags, and it looked like it was a touchdown.
98.5 The Sports Hub with the call. It's not the touchdown that mattered. It's the fact that Nick Foles hurt his shoulder in the process that mattered. So now we have a situation we won't know until today. They're going to have to do some evaluation. He left the game. Nobody's really, we don't have any certain information at this point to what the injury looks like. But what we know is there is an injury, and that sort of has Eagles fans everywhere puckered up beyond belief, because now you have your starting quarterback and possibly your backup quarterback injured.
This was always the number one insurance policy in the NFL, was understanding you had the Super Bowl MVP to guide you easily back to whenever Carson Wentz was finally ready to go through under center. Now, Foles said it just got jarred in a funny way as I was following through, but it feels good. We'll check it out tomorrow more thoroughly. And this is going to be huge, because you see these things all the time when quarterbacks get hit mid-throw, and that's the danger of the blindside hit, is when you're mid-motion and all of that, it's sort of like getting in a car accident where you're not exactly braced for that impact all the time, and so how your body absorbs it in that moment, especially for a shoulder, something as unnatural as that throwing motion already, getting hit right in the middle of it always kind of scares the hell out of you, because you never know what kind of stress it's going to put in that spot.
Nate Sudfeld turned out to have a good game. I want to give Nate a little credit, their third-string quarterback. Threw for 300 yards last night, but Louis Riddick was on with Neil Everett on SportsCenter afterwards talking about that possibility of Nate Sudfeld playing for the Eagles.
If Foles is not ready for week one, is Sudfeld ready to be your starter 3 weeks from tonight?
Well, of course not. Of course he's not ready. That's why you're hoping that Nick Foles is okay, and you're hoping that Carson Wentz's rehab continues to progress along at a pace where he can play much sooner rather than later. Look, this is the worst nightmare for a football team if you would have to, in this case, going to the regular season with someone who's totally unproven and someone who you don't know how they'll react whatsoever. Look, for every Kurt Warner that there is in terms of a Cinderella story, there's a whole bunch of them that can absolutely just submarine your season. I'm not saying that's the case here. As Nick Foles said himself, let's just wait and see what happens tomorrow. We've already seen the fact, when you jump to conclusions about a guy being okay, a lot of times 24 hours later you wind up finding out that it was something that was much more serious. You're just hoping in this case it is just a little bit of a shoulder strain and Nick's okay and they can continue on with the plan they've had in place all summer.
That's going to be the hope, and we'll get some more information over the course of today. The worst case scenario for the Eagles is that they're dealing with an injury that affects the regular season anyway. It should be noted they open against the Falcons in what will be a tough game. They also have the Colts and Titans and Vikings in the first 5 weeks. So even with the Buccaneers teams in there without Jameis Winston, they've got some games that could be difficult in the early portion.
It's going to be interesting if it once we find out information, what it is, if it keeps him out for any amount of time, if it keeps him out for an amount of time that affects that transition with Carson Wentz, if they have to look seriously at signing somebody else. Like, I watched it last night just because the games were on together, and I was like, is Teddy Bridgewater a guy that, depending how this shakes out, is in play for this team? Do they have to pursue someone like that? And clearly, like Lewis said, Nate Sudfeld, that's a little harder of a gulp if you really think you've got to trot him out there in the best interest of your longtime hopeful starter in Carson Wentz.
Yeah, such a difficult position to be in if they're in the quarterback market in any way. It's difficult to be in that market when you know that your starter at some point is going to come back. So you got to get somebody in that can get you through some time, and that's really all you're asking for.
And if you were to know, like, if Foles was in a position where he was going to be out for a little time and not a long time, there's so many things you have to potentially measure. The Eagles will hopefully get some clear answers to that today when they find out the extent, if any, of what happened to Nick Foles last night.
Golic and Wingo.
And Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
ESPN NFL analyst Darren Woodson. We'll get into some of what we saw last night.
Yeah.
But before we get there, some of what Mike and I saw yesterday afternoon has been sort of part of our conversation today as we all sat in an NFL meeting that tried to explain the new helmet rule. You've had a little bit of time to digest it. How do you feel about it now?
The same way I felt about it yesterday. Look, I get it. I understand what the NFL's doing and it's trying to do. And I think they're trying to do it the right way. And I know the game's going to change. It absolutely, and the culture's going to change. Everything's going to change. It's about the way you bring the hat as far as, the body lean and how the hat, the top of your head coming in first. And I get all that, but there's certain ways. I mean, it's one thing to talk about it. It's almost like when we're talking about it like a replay. Like you can actually slow it down. Matter of fact, yesterday was funny because Rex Ryan was trying to coach it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And he had Bill Polian. As we remember, Bill Polian was supposed to be the dummy that he was going to wrap up and hit. Like he was basically trying to show us how he would try to coach his team to hit guys. And I'm sitting there and I love Rex. Rex is my guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and Rex would be the main one who would be arguing about this because he's taught the game in a violent way. He's taught the game you really got to, if you're going to play on a Rex Ryan defense, you better be a hitter. That's the way Rex has always taught it. So he's getting up there and trying to justify how he would, show guys how to tackle. And he has Bill Polian as the guy he's using as the example.
That image will live in my brain for the rest of my life. Yesterday, we saw Rex Ryan demonstrate tackling technique on Hall of Famer Bill Polian in the middle of a meeting here. And we've got Darren, Ryan Clark, Charles Woodson, all these former defensive backs too. I mean, it's a room with a lot of guys that were, I say, understandably, because I look at this, Darren, and I say, the people that are going to be affected by this disproportionately are defensive players.
Absolutely.
And definitely linebackers and DBs, because you're the ones coming up, the second, third guy into the pile, making a lot of the hits that they're trying to pull out of the game.
Exactly. And it's your job. Listen, the problem with the defensive player is, especially a safety, because you're the last line of defense. You play with fear. You play a fear of, I have to make this tackle. I have to get this guy on the ground, because if I don't, if they score or if I whiff, I become the GOAT. I become the guy that when we get to the sideline, the coaches cuss out. I'm the guy that gets cut because I don't make that play. So I've always had that mentality as a football player. And I still talk to guys, Swearinger and guys in the league who say the same thing. Look, it's by any means necessary that I need to get you on the ground, because if I don't, I lose my job. And point blank. So I understand what they're trying to do, but when it's so fast and it's happening the way it's happening on the football field, where guys are running 4.5s and 4.3s out there, you can't just, okay, here's a split second. I'm going to make sure I move my helmet to this angle and make sure I take this target angle. You just don't think that way. You think about getting the guy on the ground and making a play and move on to the huddle.
And I think that's the one thing that gets forgotten in all of this, and it's a great point that I need to be reminded of sometimes, is if you don't have coaches and organizations that are looking at this through that lens, and guys are still being judged on, all right, the bottom line is production. Like the amount of times you hear that in the course of your football life, the bottom line is production. If you don't get to a point where coaches and organizations are cognizant of how this is affecting that, you're going to get guys that are going to lose their job, especially, I mean, the guys on the back end of the roster, the guys that are trying to hang on for dear life, they're put in a position that's almost unwinnable if everyone's not on that page.
Hey, but I get it. You know, I thought yesterday's conversation was great. Honestly, I did. I mean, I thought they came in yesterday. They knew, the NFL knew exactly what they wanted to get across. And I thought they did. I thought they did a great job of doing so. It's just going to be hard for the average safety or the average linebacker in the league. It's going to be hard to make that adjustment because not only are you thinking about getting the guy on the ground, but you're thinking about it's just a part of us to protect yourself as well.
Yep.
We're talking to ESPN NFL analyst Darren Woodson on Golic and Wingo, Jason Fitz and Mike Golic Jr. and for Trey and Mike. So the other piece of this that I'm trying to wrap my head around from guys that played the game, right, is how you practice this skill. Yeah. Because that's the piece. We're just now getting this information. And now that we know the teams are just now getting the information, how realistic is it that you can switch your instincts with the limited number of padded practices they have, with the way practices are run?
And that's the problem. That's the problem. The limited amount of padded practice that you have to actually practice that drill. And half the time you're practicing those drills and you're in shorts and you're in walkthroughs and you're going basically with how we did it yesterday with Rex and Bill Poley. You just, there's no moving target. It's not a real assessment. So you can try and teach it, but it's just going to have to be, listen, I think the game's going to change. The safety position as we know it, the linebacker position, or the safety position at the same time. And my phone's ringing.
I was going to say, no, it's okay. Listen, it's the curtain being...
It's probably Trey calling me.
Oh, yeah. That sounds about right.
But it's going to be hard for that situation because think about the safety position, like the Swearingers. I was thinking about Swearinger yesterday. I know he's had a ton of penalties across the board in years past. But the day of the big safety, that's just the thumper, those days are over with.
Yeah,
they're done. It's over. So what's going to be more cornerbacks are going to be transitioning to the safety position because that big safety that's going to hit you is a liability. He's a 15-yard penalty waiting to happen all the time. So you're going to have to that game. It's going to change the strong safety position as a whole. Cam Chancellor doesn't have a chance if he ever came back to play. Doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, that's going to be tough stuff to overcome. That being said, and looking at some of the games last night before you have to get out of here, some of the games last night and some of the players last night we saw, I thought the Jet safeties actually did a really good job of trying to adjust to these. Now, it allowed them giving up some extra yards in the process, but they did a good job. And last night we know a lot of the conversation too going to be around Sam Darnold and what he did. What were your impressions of the young quarterback, his second chance, his first start in a preseason game?
I like what I see in Sam Darnold. And I know he had his struggles yesterday through the interception and traffic yesterday. And that was a mistake that he probably should have threw the ball away or tried to go get it with his legs. So one or the other. But at the same time, the kid goes 8 for 11. He made some throws early on in that game that were spectacular. I thought he made, they ran an in cut in one when he threw it basically inside a window. He did some things as far as going through his reads. He did hold on to the ball a few times too long. But, those are mistakes that you can clean up. Those are mistakes that you can grow with. But at the same time, the guy that I was impressed with really is when he came in the game was Teddy Bridgewater. And I know his stats, they don't show. His stats line probably was terrible. I don't know what they were yesterday. But his first 3 throws were drops. And he made throws yesterday off his back foot, going to his left. I mean, early on and when he first came in the game, and I thought, man, those are some good throws that he made. And guys just dropped the ball. Whoever, I don't know who's out there. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater probably will not be on the Jets team.
Correct.
He's going to be traded somewhere. But whoever picks up Teddy Bridgewater, you're going to gain some.
I love the fact that we've decided as a show when we're hosting that we won't come in until the drums actually come into whatever track brings us in. Makes no sense on the pod.
I respect the drop.
I appreciate that. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike, and we're joined by ESPN NFL analyst Darren Woodson. You were talking just a second ago about the way Teddy Bridgewater looked.
Yeah.
And this becomes a really interesting question because there's complications now in Philadelphia. We don't know, and I have to say this clearly so everybody hears it. We don't know the extent of Nick Foles' shoulder injury. We just know that he strained his shoulder last night. We'll find out more information, we would presume, today. But it puts the Eagles in a really weird situation if he's going to miss, let's say, 6 or 8 weeks or a short portion of the season because they already have a starting quarterback. Do you think a team like that would be in the market for Teddy Bridgewater?
Absolutely. Yes. I would say yes. Now, they afford him because there might be a little price tag that goes along with that. So, a guy like RG3 who may be on the market, like we talked about earlier, he may be a guy that could come in and just add depth to the position. But
can he win you games right now? I mean, RG3?
Look, I think the team that you have around you, you'd have to limit some of the playbook because, anybody that comes in is going to have to learn the playbook. It's going to be a whole new vocab coming in. So they're going to have, in terminology, they're going to have to figure that out. But, we still have to wait to see what happened, what the situation is with Nick Foles. I think that's going to have to play itself out. But through all of this, they're probably, if Nick Foles is out for a time stint, maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they're going to have to bring someone in just for depth reasons. Because you're not going to accelerate the process of Carson Wentz. You can't. You got to when he's ready to go, if that's week 1 or week 2 or week 3, when he's physically ready to go and you've determined that and you're confident of that, then you put him in. But I just don't think that it should accelerate that process of bringing Carson Wentz back in.
And I think that's another part of a variable of who you're bringing in is what the timetable that you realistically have set up that only Philadelphia really knows right now. Because we can all talk about this as a 9 to 12 month injury, but everything you hear out of them seems so full of praise for how far along he is in that process there. And that's the guy that you need to come back and play at a high level for you.
That's the guy that wants to come back. That's the guy who sat on the sideline during the Super Bowl last year and was biting his tongue lip the whole time because he wants to play. And there's got to be some of that burns in him right now to say, I was on a Super Bowl team last year, but I wasn't the starting quarterback of that in that game. So I'm trying to get back as fast as I possibly can. And this guy's the face of your franchise. This is the guy that you have to take care of, man. You got to do whatever it is to maximize the fact of he's my guy moving forward for the next 10, 12 years. I got to protect him.
So speaking of guys that want to play, Dez wants to play.
Yeah.
He's in Cleveland. He has some conversations with the Browns. I think the quote is that they've got some things, they've got to work some things out. Dez, in your mind, a good fit for the Browns?
Yes, but you're going to have to get Dez on the same page. I thought, if Dez is going to make a decision to come in, I felt like it should have been early on, like maybe in the mini camps or, in June, July, because now he's going to have to digest the playbook. If you're expecting Dez to come in and be the savior and be the guy that has fully digested the playbook and can run every route in the Cleveland and Hugh Jackson system, that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to be a process. I think Dez is a guy that can help you in the plus 20, go up and get it. And people keep on saying, he's not a 50-50 guy. If you put the ball where he needs it, he's a 50-50 guy still. So I think he could add something to the Cleveland Browns. He could add something to the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, who can throw that back shoulder fade and throw that, make some pass throws that he can go get. But there's some teams out there. I think Cleveland will be a good fit, but you have to understand what you're getting in Dez. He's a lightning rod when he comes in.
And I guess that's where I want to go next because you mentioned Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers where there's really no question about who runs the show in Green Bay.
Absolutely.
And everyone gets in line for a player the caliber of Aaron Rodgers. In Cleveland, you're in transition right now. Tyrod's going to be the guy. Hugh Jackson keeps going on that, but we know eventually this becomes Baker Mayfield's team. How much do you worry about Dez Bryant, the personality that you've seen up close and personal in Dallas, going into that receiver room, that offensive room?
Because you're talking about LeBron, you're talking about Landry, who's going to be in that room, who's a lightning rod, who's a huge personality. Mayfield's going to be a personality at the same time. You got certain players that you're going to have to deal with personality wise. I don't. There's two sides of this. I still think Dez has a lot more in him. Just in watching him, what burns inside of him, he wants to compete at every level. Sometimes it gets to the point with Dez where you understand that he wants to compete, But there's little things that he has to do. There's the little things, the little adjustments that he has to be. He has to be better in the locker room. He's got to be better at being there on time. He's got to be better as far as taking care of his body. And I know he wants to play every week and he wants to fight through things on his own, but there's a medical staff there for a reason. Do the little things that it takes to be a pro. And that's the question, because I know he wants to compete. I know he has a lot more left, but he still has to do the little things to get there, to be that great competitor that he's always been.
ESPN NFL analyst Darren Woodson in studio with us. Is that an adjustment that you have to make as a veteran player too, is adjusting to a lot of those things? Yeah,
it is. I think so. It took me a while to figure out, I had to watch guys like Daryl Johnston, Moose. I got to figure out, I had to figure out how to be a professional by watching guys like that. And Dez is no different. And Dez is going to a new situation. So here it is. He's been in Dallas all these years, and the culture in Dallas has been one way. Now he's going to move on to another team. Let's say it's the Green Bay Packers. Let's say it's the Cleveland Browns. Now he's going to have to make those adjustments because he's not back in Dallas. His home is not in Cleveland. It's back. It's in a new environment, new terminology. It's a process that he's going to have to go through. And that's going to be the big question for him. Can he make those adjustments?
The big question for me is the next time there's a tackling demonstration at an ESPN NFL event, you, me.
We're going?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
can't wait.
I want it live, though.
Oh, yeah.
Take him to the ground.
And you can be a moving target as well.
I'll
take that fine.
Oh, so
I'll take that
That's
fine.
good. I can run. Yeah. And then, you know what? All for content. I think we've now got the way we should kick off the NFL season.
You know what?
This is the way it needs to go. We can get Jeff Saturday in there to snap the ball to Bill Polian. Bill Polian can throw a pass over the middle to Jason Fitz. And that's when Darren Woodson comes and lights him up.
I want you to have a cup of your pumpkin latte in your hand when
that's perfect. Mike, you can stand in front on the offensive line and it'll feel just like your time in the NFL. He'll just beat you right around the corner and then it'll be perfect.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Support for the Golic and Wingo Show podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Let's talk about buying homes for a minute. Because of rising interest rates, there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to buying a home these days. It's causing a whole lot of anxiety with folks. Well, our friends at Quicken Loans are doing something about it. They're calling it the power buying process, and here's how it works. Quicken Loans will verify your income, assets, and credit in less than 24 hours to give you a verified approval. This gives you the strength of a cash buyer. Then once you're verified, you qualify for their all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, they lock your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. Now here's the best part. If rates go up, your rate stays the same. But if rates go down, your rate also drops. You win either way. It's the kind of thinking you'd expect from America's largest mortgage lender. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Golic. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply. Based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data record. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS ConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha 990. I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nashville's own Brent Snedeker joins us on the heels of a spectacular day. Brent, thanks for some time, man. We appreciate you coming on with us. You shot a 59 yesterday. When you're in the groove like that, is there a moment where you just sort of realize in the middle of it that you are crushing life?
There was a moment yesterday when I had on the 8th tee, I was at the birdie, one of my last two holes to shoot 59, that kind of hit me for a minute what was going on and realized that I need to do something, especially these last two holes, to get it done, because I probably will never have this opportunity again in my life. So I need to really enjoy the moment, go out there and try to succeed.
So that's interesting. So when it's out there and it's you and your caddy, because people always think in golf, when you've got someone that's on the cusp of doing something like a perfect game or a no-hitter, everyone will kind of ignore that moment. Is this something you guys are actively talking about then on the course?
Yeah. I had a chance earlier in my career to do it, and I kind of did the no-hitter route. Didn't want to talk to anybody about it, didn't want to look at it, think about it, and I didn't do it. And yesterday it was just too obvious. I was 10 under par, needed to make one birdie with 2 holes to go, and everybody's getting kind of quiet. So I started talking about it, just saying, guys, I'm going to try to do this. This is so cool. It's so much fun today. I got a birdie one of these last 2 holes and kept telling myself I could hit the last 2 fairways. I'd have 2 wedges in my hand. I think I could get it done. Ended up doing that, birdieing the last hole to get it done. So it's a really cool moment, a lot of fun. But today's back to reality. Back to the golf tournament, got to figure out a way to win this golf tournament now.
I mean, that Brent raises a great question because I realize every day's a new day, but is there anything you can try to do to maintain a little of the momentum from yesterday?
It's the hardest thing in golf is to play around after you've done something like that you did yesterday. But the next round's always, for whatever reason, I don't know why. It's just really, really tough to come out and shoot another low one. Hopefully I can keep the momentum going and ride it for as long as it'll let me ride it. But today's a completely different day, completely new round. I'm going to try to block out yesterday as much as possible and get back into the thing because it's a long week. When we got 3 more rounds of golf, a lot can happen. So as great as yesterday was, I enjoyed it last night. I had a lot of fun talking about it and sitting around. Today's a new day, and I'm here trying to win the golf tournament.
Talking to Brandt Snedeker, shot a 59 yesterday in the first round of the Wyndham Championship. And Brandt, I'm interested because so much of us focus on this from the outside, but looking at you now, you were paired with Tiger a couple of times this year. We see the draw that he brings to a tournament. We see the environment he creates. How much different is it when you get to a tournament now and you get to sort of take a breath when you're out in a different environment like this? What do you take from those experiences that help you maybe get over some mental hurdles like this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, last week at the PGA, the crowds were unbelievable. And it's probably as biggest crowds I've seen since the Ryder Cup. Just seeing the juice in the crowd with Tiger's there and the way he was playing last week was so cool. It's so great for us on tour to have that kind of energy and life back in the tour again. And you have to embrace that and enjoy it. The crowds are crazy. They're going nuts for Tiger. When you're in the atmosphere with them, you got to have fun with it, enjoy the moment, and realize how special it is to be playing against them and with them. And so, a week like this, you kind of miss that energy a little bit. Not quite as crazy as it was last week, but still a lot of fun out here, and still having a great time doing what I do for a living. But it's great having Tiger back playing the way he's playing, and kind of drawing that interest level back that brings the casual fan into golf, which is what we need.
Brent, it's really interesting to me that you're talking about the energy and how it's different with each one. How does it affect you, just the different environment and atmosphere around it when you're trying to just focus on you?
Yeah, it's tougher. Definitely playing a Tiger, you have to have a different attitude. You've got to kind of embrace the craziness because it's people will be screaming at you all day long, and it's taxing. It really is mentally and physically taxing on you. So you've got to embrace that challenge and enjoy it. A week like this where it's not quite as crazy, you're more kind of focused in on what you need to do specifically to play well, have a good time with your caddy out there, try to keep you loose, and wait till Sunday until the pressure really starts amping up on Sunday afternoon. So totally different mindset. You just got to get your mind around it and kind of zone in on what you need to do to play well.
Brent, congratulations on a fantastic round yesterday. Best of luck throughout the course of the weekend. Y'all check out Brent, not only a great golfer, but great person in the Nashville community, his charity at Our Kids TN for the Twitter handle on it. Brent, thanks for coming on with us, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. 50. Miss you in Nashville, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Killing it up there in Bristol.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Jason Fitz and Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike. And you know what? I just saw as the TV broadcast flashes the pictures of each of the three of you across the screen. Mike, I have to say, your pictures for Golic and Wingo were really good. You were very photogenic.
I was in a good place in life then. I was fresh off my wedding diet for my brother's wedding. I was lean. I was mean. I was limber that day too. I was doing everything. I had it all.
Didn't ask for the limber part.
Don't care.
So we've been teasing it forever. We're finally going to get to it. It is time to get in to a little over-under.
Over-under. With Golic and Wingo.
Devin, you going to do some reading for us?
I am.
Woohoo!
Over under 4 interceptions for Jalen Ramsey this season.
Taking the over.
Oh, yeah. Give me the over on this one. Had 4 interceptions last season, and, this is only going to add fuel to his fire. Like, he's a guy I truly believe, and I have watched defensive backs will themselves to be better than they are. Guys with much more meager skills than Jalen Ramsey, just by their level of bleep talking, just by their own otherworldly confidence in themselves. I truly think that's how this guy gets down.
I think there's also a piece of it when you look at the division. the ball's going to go in the air more than we're used to. Look, the Titans have changed the head coach and they're going away from a run-first offense. They're going to give Mariota more opportunities, which means he's going to get more opportunities to make picks. Andrew Luck, obviously returning, is going to mean they'll throw the ball more there. When you look at their schedule, particularly, they have some opportunities. They play the Chiefs. Again, they're playing some pass-oriented offenses. They're going to have the opportunity to get some picks. I think he goes over.
Over under 3 touchdowns Des Bryant catches this season.
Ooh, all right. So Bryant had 6 touchdowns last year. The Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Cleveland Browns overall last year managed to put up 15 touchdown passes last year. So different offense this year. Tyrod Taylor. That's assuming he ends up with the Browns too. Got Darren Woodson's in my head now because he mentioned the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say Dez finds himself in a spot, nice role player, end zone guy, might be a little touchdown dependent, but find a way. Good jump ball player.
I'm going to say under. Look, if there were teams out there that really thought he could still legitimately be a 6-touchdown guy, if they believed that was sort of the opportunity that he could replicate last year's production, he'd already be on a roster somewhere. I don't know where he's going to end up. If he's going to end up somewhere, is he going to be able to find something that pays him what he wants when he gets there? What kind of shape's he going to be in? What kind of contributions he going to be able to give? These are all things we don't know. So if I'm going to have to put money one way or the other, I go under.
I don't need him to be a 6-touchdown guy. I just need him to be over 3.
That's fair.
Over under 115.5 wins for the Red Sox this season.
So 116, the major league record set by the 2001 Mariners. Do we think they get over that hump right now? What's the current record, Fitz?
86.
Looking it up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. They have 86 right now.
86 wins right now through 112 games.
Yeah, they're 86-36. I'm going to take the under. And I'm going to take the under because, frankly, as the season wears on and we find out that the Yankees aren't going to be in any sort of real competition for it, do we know they won't take the foot off the gas at the end of the year? It's hard for me to look at it and think that the record for wins is really important to them at this point. So I will take the under, not because they're not capable of it, but because, frankly, it won't be a motivator for them. They won't have to get it.
I'm going to take the under as well, just because, these all-time marks are difficult to hit, and I don't think this is a Red Sox team. As good as we thought they were going to be, it wasn't one that I expected, especially with the added production they got, bringing J.D. Martinez over. Mookie Betts improved a lot from last year to this year. That's been a big part of this, but I still think they fall a little short.
Nashvilleian Mookie Betts.
Oh, my God.
Speaking of Nashvilleian, over under 65, round 2 score for your guy, Brent Snedeker, today at the Wyndham Championship.
Under because I'm a homer.
My God. Once he called you Fitzy, I stopped listening on this show. Snedeker, the 59 yesterday in the round, the 10th round of 59 or better in tour history. I'll take the under on this guy. You know what? Just because I liked his attitude talking to him. He understood. He's talked about appreciating the environment that's been created by Tiger Woods. Talked about resetting today. Overcame a bogey on the first hole to go on and shoot that great round and leaned into it. He said, before I had treated great rounds like that, like a no-hitter, like a perfect game where I didn't talk about it. He said, I got a chance to do something great. I'm going to lean into this one. I think he'll follow it up and go under 65.
Over under September 1st, when Dunkin' Donuts should be releasing pumpkin spice coffee.
All right, go with me here. All right, I'm going to go with the under. I'm going to go before, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that they should be able to do it in each city based on when kids go back to school. Because one thing I was talking to people, I was back in Nashville hanging out. I was talking to people, and one of the conversations was they're already long since back in school in the Nashville area, and everybody was saying, man, it feels like summer's over once the kids go back to school. It just feels like the end of the season. Up here, kids don't go back to school until September. So, like the first high school football games are Friday night, tonight, actually, in Nashville. So they already have sort of kicked themselves towards fall. So in that market, they should be pumpkin spiced. Once you have kids in school, you go back to pumpkin spice.
I'm going to take the over on this one because you want to talk about school being the mark for this. And I say, no. There's only one thing that marks the beginning of fall. It's college football season. Notre Dame, Michigan, September 1st, on a Saturday, that next day, the official beginning of college football season. And that's when the first sip of this majestic elixir will be tasted.
You want it the next day?
Yes.
You don't want to be able to go to the game with it?
Not going to the game drinking a pumpkin spice latte or any coffee, Fitz, not unless I can put a fistful of Baileys in it.
Wait. I'm not a man for the way that I drink my coffee, and you just went straight to Bailey's?
It's got booze in it. I'm cool.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know if you've ever been to the South, but they put Jack Daniels in coffee, too.
I put a lot of things in coffee.
I mean, I'm just saying. You went straight
listen,
to Bailey's.
South Bend, there's plenty of Irish coffee around there. You come up, we'll show you how it gets down. You and the Nashville Board of Tourism could learn something.
I think that you should, though, rethink your stance on it and go one day earlier so that they've had it out for a day so that you can just go whenever you want. Like the day before, you're going to be in South Bend, you're celebrating the open of football season, you should have come to my side.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.